welcome to SMUBE Campus Radio, Say What You Wanna Say. My name is Sammy, your host for this episode, and welcome to A Cuppa With, an alumni-giving podcast series where we'll be having special guest alumni for an informal coffee chat. These conversations will take us through their life journey, their careers, what success means to them, as well as touch on diverse perspectives on creating meaningful impact through their work, projects, or life. Today, we're honoured to have Ms. Joan Chang here with us. The co-founder of Lloyd's Inn, she is one of Prestige Magazine's 40 Under 40, and she was formerly an SMU business student. This is A Cuppa with Joan Chang. Welcome, Joan. It's so great having you back at SMU. How do you feel?
I feel a bit nostalgic, I guess. I mean, the last time I've been here was probably a year back. Sometimes I do come back to campus just to see, the things that have changed and just to see I think what new things have been built. I think you guys are lucky because you have a nice new campus. I mean the new compound, right? SMU Connection. Yeah, it looks really nice.
Yeah, I think SMU Connection is a really great place for us to hang out. I like to go there with my friends and we'll just eat and chill there. So how do you think your SMU experience has contributed to your current success?
Firstly, I think probably being in SMU probably made me more a holistic individual. I mean, I studied hard, but then I think at the same time, as I mentioned, I think it was important to have a balance to be able to have student life, and I think that's what SMU gave me. Secondly, also, I think it did train me to be a little bit more vocal in terms of how to present yourself and, preparing for presentations and all that. And I think I was one of those that always class parted. I always class parted a lot lah. So, I mean, people probably hated me because of it, but end of the day, I think it does train you to think of questions, to formulate thoughts in your head, before asking questions, and then to have a strategic thought before acting and executing things.
Yeah, I think these are some really uniquely SMU things. So you now hold multiple portfolios, including your most recent endeavour, the Ove Collection. And for our listeners, the Ove has projects such as a boutique residence known as the Iberia, as well as Canopy Spa in Bali under its belt. So Joan, what inspired you to embark on such an all-in-one branding?
When we look at brands, you can think of, when you talk about real estate, there's a lot of real estate brands in the market. When you talk about lifestyle brands, there are lifestyle brands in the market. But you don't have a brand that fuses both together and that you have both real estate and lifestyle all in one. And I think the vision of the brand is to be that. So whatever project in our portfolio is not just done with real estate in mind. It's not just developing and building and calling it day. It has to be done with that ethos, that detail and that sense that we have in place.
Yeah, I think those are really wise words in terms of business. So I noticed in one of your interviews that you talked about quiet luxury. So how do you think you've woven that into your branding of Ove?
I think when you look at our projects, we are not, traditionally luxurious per se. When you think about, let's say, traditionally luxurious, you would have, I must have all the high-end specs, I must have all the high-end materials, I could use this and that, everything must be expensive. But I think that's not necessarily the case. I think at the end of the day, when we spend time to look at certain things of a project, not everything has to be expensive, and when you make a choice in certain materials, be it even if you use, say, a cheaper material, but if you combine it with something, I think it's the combination and how we put things together, and that involves time and detail. And of course, definitely when you kickstart hospitality and everything, details come in other things, your finer touches, your service, other things. And I think these all contribute to the traditional notion of luxury.
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting actually. So did you touch on any of your personal experiences when you were doing the branding of Ove?
Firstly, I think I wouldn't do a project that I'm personally not into. So I'm really into nature, light, and all these natural elements also. So I try to make it, fuse it to part of our branding. And then also secondly, I love to travel. So I travel quite a bit and I always get inspirations, a lot of my inspiration when I travel.
So speaking of traveling, in Prestige Magazine's August 2020 issue, you mentioned that you had to decide between accepting an overseas job offer and staying in Singapore to rebrand Lloyd's Inn. So what made you decide to stay?
So I think that time it was quite a big consideration, because on you have advantages in both. On one hand, there's that overseas experience, which definitely, even till today, I still think that it will be very valuable, because there's only that time in your youth where you can go out and you have no obligations, and you can just you can grow so much and learn about another culture, live in another country, be independent. There's definitely an experience. And on the other hand, you have that time where there is this opportunity at that time when we were not so much into social media yet. Social media was still new, digital media was still new, and I think that this opportunity was also there for us to then rebrand it at this point in time, and roll it out. And I think at the end of the day, both were what I would say at that time equally good opportunities, but I think I made the decision leaning towards my then boyfriend, now husband, because he was still in Singapore, and I think I had to consider that as well. So I would think the decision probably was also because of that. I think at the end of the day, in a relationship, it's also about a little bit, it's not so much about yourself always. We have to think of the other person. It's important to be able to compromise sometimes what we want for other people, and I think that weighed quite a bit into my decision making process.
Yeah, I think that's really good relationship advice. So since Lloyd's Inn has expanded to Bali, do you think you've sort of woven both dreams together?
Yes, initially I really enjoyed it. I think I still enjoy traveling, but traveling for work and traveling for leisure is different. I think a lot of people tend to think, oh, you're just having fun and everything, but traveling for work is very tiring. We the minute we land, we start off meetings, and when I travel, it can be like 24 hours, 48 hours. I pack in a trip. I think the most number of places I've done is 6 countries in a week. So really like touchdown meetings, and then after you touchdown, you fly to someone else, and I think it's quite tiring. It's not as so-called glamorous as what people think. You have time to have fun and everything.
Yeah, I think traveling for work definitely feels a lot different from when we travel for leisure, because that's more relaxed, right? So speaking of work, what were some of the challenges that you faced when rebranding Lloyd's Inn?
I think probably one of the main challenge I would definitely face would probably be my age and experience, because I was working with people that have a lot more experience, a lot more senior than I am, and I think also I didn't study hospitality, I didn't study design, I didn't study architecture. I think definitely go into an industry where you know nothing about. So I think for me, I rolled up my sleeves, and I really went from the ground up. So I think I spent my first 2 years like just listening. I think listening is very important, because like we don't know the best, and we need to listen to other people. So listen to the people around me that are more senior than I am. Be on the ground. I did housekeeping, I did cleaning, I cleaned the toilets, I cleaned I really went on the ground, and I did I was front office, I entertained the guests. All this I think helps you to really step in their shoes and feel what they're going through, so that then when you are leading the effort, then you can understand what they have been through, and you will know how the process and how the SOP and how it works.
So I'm sure many of us, when we think about the hospitality industry now, we would think about how COVID-19 has badly hit many hotels. So I'm sure our audience would like to know, how has Lloyd's Inn's business strategy changed during the pandemic?
I think when we look at business strategy, there are 2 parts of business strategy. First is the macro part, second is the micro. I think in terms of the macro part, it hasn't changed, because macro perspective is still there. I do believe that hospitality will eventually return, because we can't not travel, I think, and we are pushing ahead with our plans. So we are hoping to open Lloyd's Inn KL. I think hoping to do a soft opening by end of this year. I think we won't do a full-fledged. Normally we do a big opening with inviting people down and all that, but I think unfortunately that won't be possible. But we're still pushing ahead with our plans to open, and the macro perspective hasn't really changed in terms of our expansion. But I think in the micro perspective, I think yes, it has affected the hospitality industry, and we have had to pivot and change a bit of our strategies. For example, in Singapore now, it's a fully domestic market. We are on Klook if you guys want to use your Singapore Rediscovers vouchers, and also in Bali we've had to work on closing a few floors, and then just kind of running on low occupancy, and also just re-looking at the strength of the team, just so that we can run on a more optimal efficiency.
I'm sure we're all very interested to know, what keeps you going during hard times?
Definitely, I think traveling is one. I'm itching to travel again. I miss traveling a lot, and that's really my go-to, because you really feel free. There's no obligations, and then normally, like for me, I like to travel. Then I get and then I can come back and focus on my work. So that's one. But I think now without that, I've been trying to also. I do other things in Singapore, like hiking, nature walks, all these. There are a lot of things in life to be happy and not take for granted.
So going back to COVID-19, many people and businesses are struggling to stay afloat. And there's some talk about philanthropy and giving back to society. What is your personal take on this?
In general, I agree with philanthropy and giving back to society. I think it's definitely something that I will also want to look at. However, I think it's important not to confuse the objectives of philanthropy and business. It's important not to mix it, so to speak, because the objective of business and the only objective is to profit. How to look at this is, if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. So therefore, when it comes to, say, COVID-19, when it affected, say, lots of businesses, I think at the end of the day, we have to stand on our own 2 feet first and first look at whether you can take care of your own stuff.
So what are some of the causes that you hope to be able to contribute to?
Definitely the light has been, I think they've been shining the spotlight on issues recently. Is probably mental wellness. I think at the end of the day, in a society like in Singapore, we're all very busy and everything. I think it's something that is commonly underlooked. And I think in general also, just people that are not as fortunate, people that maybe they are handicapped, or maybe they just need certain welfare. So I've done like food distribution where we gave food to some of these elderly. When you see what they need and you talk to them, and then you become more empathetic as a person.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts about giving back to society. So before we end this session, I just have one last question for you. If you had to give one piece of advice for your 21-year-old self, what would it be? I think
for me, I would say, things are normally actually worse than what you actually fear. So for me, I always tell myself, just jump into the deep end. If there's something that you have to do, when you set a goal, be willing to try and to dive in deep. And when you dive in, then at the end of the day, we struggle, but we swim. At the end of the day, the fear is always you might drown. Which, yes, there is a possibility, but at least you tried. You're not sitting on the side.
And with that, we've come to the end of today's episode of A Cuppa with Joan Chang. Thank you, Joan, for being here with us today, and thank you for tuning in. Once again, I'm Sammy from SMUBE Campus Radio. Say what you want to say.